One stormy night, Emily finds herself home alone. The wind howled and the rain pounded the windows. As she sat in the living room, she began to hear faint footsteps upstairs. Her heart skipped a beat when she realized she was supposed to be the only one at home. Gathering courage, she cautiously climbed the stairs, only to find an empty hallway. She convinced herself that it was only her imagination, but the footsteps continued to falter. She locked herself in her room and tried to ignore the sounds. Hours passed and the footsteps drew closer, stopping just outside his bedroom door. Trembling, she called her parents, who assured her they were on their way. While she waited, the door slowly opened. A dark figure entered, his face obscured by darkness. Emily's screams pierced the air as soon as her parents rushed through the front door. They turned on the lights, revealing nothing in his room but a gust of wind through the open window. The footsteps faded away, making Emily wonder if it was all a nightmare. Emily's parents came home to find her shaking and pale. She recounted the events of the night, explaining how she heard footsteps, saw a dark figure and felt a chilling presence outside her bedroom door. His parents ransacked the house, but there was no sign of an intruder. They reassured Emily, thinking her imagination was running wild because of the storm. Days turned into weeks and life seemed to return to normal. However, Emily couldn't help but think that something lingered in the house. Strange happenings began to happen. Objects moved on their own, cold spots appeared out of nowhere, and faint whispers echoed throughout the corridor. Her parents call these incidents a coincidence, but Emily's discomfort only gets worse. One night, while Emily was lying in bed, she heard footsteps again. This time, they were accompanied by a whisper that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Stay with me," he begged, his voice cold, emphasizing the words. The voice was strangely familiar. Emily realizes it's hers. Frightened, Emily ran away from her room and into the attic. Among the family's old belongings, she discovers a dusty diary belonging to her great-grandmother. Flipping through its pages, she came across an entry describing an entity that had been trapped in a house, harboring fear and growing stronger with each generation. The magazine offers a ritual for the expulsion of the entity, which involves facing one's deepest fears. With renewed determination, Emily returned to her room. She closed her eyes, facing each of her fears. The room seemed to shake and a high-pitched scream filled the air. When Emily opened her eyes, the room was empty. The footsteps stopped. Alone in her grandparents' old house, Lily decides to explore the attic. Among the dusty old furniture, she discovered a vintage mirror. When she looked at her reflection, the surface of the mirror rippled like water. Shocked, Lily backed away, but her reflection was still trapped in the corrugated glass. Frightened, she reached out to touch the mirror, and her hand slipped into another terrifying dimension. Frozen air and distorted versions of familiar objects filled the room. A distorted figure resembling Lily approached the darkness, mimicking her movements with sinister intentions. She withdrew herself and, her heart pounding, the mirror back to normal. Scared but curious, Lily dared to look at herself in the mirror again, only to find her reflection beckoning her with a finger, as if urging her to cross. She resisted the temptation by smashing the mirror with an old chair. The mirror shattered, sending out a chilling groan that echoed throughout the house. Lily never entered the attic again, haunted by the thought of what might happen if she heeded the call of her reflection. After breaking the mirror, Lily felt relieved, as if a great burden had been lifted. The strange size in the mirror disappeared and its reflection returned to its normal shape. Still shaking, she buried the broken mirror in the back of the attic, hoping to forget the terrifying experience. Days turned into weeks, and Lily gradually shelved the case. However, strange things started to happen. In the photos, her reflection appears slightly distorted, as if the undulation of the mirror surface has followed her. She saw movements in the corners of her eyes and icy winds that seemed to come out of nowhere. One night, while sleeping, Lily was awakened by whispers that seemed to come from all around her. "You should have come with me," he hissed. Frightened, she turned on the light, but the voice continued, louder and more insistent. It seemed to come from the broken mirror she had hidden. Gathering up her courage, Lily took back the mirror. The whispers grew louder as she held the shards in her hand. In a moment of despair, she held the largest fragment to her eye, and her vision rippled like water. She found herself back in the warped dimension, once again facing her evil reflection. This time, she did not hesitate. With fierce determination, Lily stepped forward, facing her reflection with a determination she didn't know she possessed. The reflection blurred, its sinister smile faded. Lily's world had changed, and when she opened her eyes, she was back in her bedroom, the mirror pieces completely reassembled in front of her. She understands that her reflection is a manifestation of her own fears and doubts, seeking to trap her in another reality. With her newfound confidence, Lily placed the restored mirror in her attic, no longer haunted by its power. Allison's parents are away for the weekend, leaving her alone at home. The first night, her phone rings with a call from an unknown number. She replied, only to be greeted with an eerie silence. She assumed it was the wrong number and hung up. The same thing happened the next night, and the next night. Increasingly annoyed, she decided to track the calls. The number leads to an abandoned house a few blocks away. Feeling both fear and curiosity, Allison approached the house. The windows were broken and the yard was overgrown. When she stepped onto the porch, her phone rang again, but this time she could hear a faint whisper on the other end. With each step into the house, the whispers grew louder. She follows their trail to a rotting basement door. Gathering courage, she opened it, revealing a dimly lit room with a tattered armchair facing her. The whispers were now a cacophony of cryptic voices. Trembling, Allison approached the chair and turned it around. It was empty then. But the voices continued, seemingly coming from the walls themselves. Terrified, she ran out of the house and never looked back. To this day, she can't forget the creepy feeling that something was waiting in the dark, just out of sight. After running away from the abandoned house, Allison tried to escape this disturbing experience. Voices and whispers seemed to follow her everywhere. She began to see shadows out of the corners of her eyes and felt like she was being watched constantly. Sleep eluded her, and when she slept, nightmares flooded her dreams. Desperate to find answers, Allison delves into local history, uncovering the story of a former resident obsessed with the supernatural. This person will conduct rituals to communicate with the other side, leaving traces of occult disturbances. With a sense of purpose, Allison returns to the abandoned house armed with knowledge. She conducted her own research and performed a cleansing ritual. As she lit candles and chanted spells, the air was filled with energy. Suddenly, the whispers increased, forming words that seemed to come from all directions. "You woke us up," the voices hissed. "We were bound, but now we are free." Allison felt a terrifying presence around her, but she persisted, determined to end the torment. With the last spell, a blinding light filled the room, forcing the presence to retreat. When Allison's vision was clear, the house was quiet and silent. The voices had softened and a sense of peace filled the air. Upon leaving the house, Allison knew she had faced an evil force and had triumphed over it.